Last fall, I was on a Zoom call with a new client, a C-level exec, and after a quick intro, she paused and exhaled, clearly frustrated. "I don't understand," she said. "Empowerment is one of my core values. I've spent 18 months trying to give my team more autonomy, communicating why it matters, encouraging managers to cascade the message. But the employee survey just came back, and the top complaint was lack of autonomy, too much micromanagement. What am I doing wrong?" As we dug into the details, a pattern started to emerge. She had talked about empowerment, but her managers hadn't lived it. Empowerment's much more than saying, "You're empowered," and without real behavior change, the skepticism was high. Now, when leaders talked about empowerment, employees were starting to roll their eyes.
We call that empowerment or delegation theater. When a leader says out loud, "You're empowered, you own this decision," but then says with their actions, "You're empowered as long as you make the decision I would make." It's like giving someone a car but keeping the keys. They hear you're empowered, but all they feel is frustration. So in this episode, we're going to share how to shift from empowerment theater to real productive empowerment, the kind that leaves employees feeling motivated, making good delegated decisions, and contributing real creative, innovative solutions to the most pressing business needs.
Before we dive in, a quick reminder, the Humanizing Work Show is brought to you by the Humanizing Work Company, where we help organizations transform leadership, product management, and collaboration. If you're ready for better results, visit humanizingwork.com to schedule a conversation. And if you enjoy the show, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share your thoughts in the comments.
In consulting with product development organizations, we often see this gap between intended empowerment and reality. I was working with a team recently where leadership kept saying, "You own the backlog." But every sprint planning, the same exec would show up and completely reorder their priorities.
That's another classic and all too common example of empowerment theater. There's a big risk that over time, when this happens, it creates a learned helplessness where teams just stop even trying to make decisions because they know they're going to get overruled anyway.
Yeah, we've seen that more than once, and it's hard to unwind once it's in place. So the big question is, how do you break out of the empowerment theater trap?
Right, because most managers we work with see the benefits of greater empowerment. After all, if I empower someone to have autonomy over certain decisions and the results are good, that's one less thing I have to focus on as a manager. That's productive empowerment, and that's a win-win all around.
I like that term, productive empowerment. It's the opposite of empowerment theater, which is unproductive and demotivating. So here's how we've seen leaders create productive empowerment. Empowerment rests on three critical pillars: clarity, capability, and systems. If any one of these three is missing, empowerment collapses. When teams lack clarity, they don't know what decisions they can make or what success looks like. When they lack capability, they don't have the skills or information to make good decisions and execute effectively. And when systems are missing or misaligned, even the best clarity and capability won't translate into real sustainable, productive empowerment. I worked with an education software company that was struggling with product teams having to wait for their database team to approve and implement database changes for them. They were cross-functional except for the database capability. So the exec in charge said, "I think most of our product teams actually have developers with database skills, so let's empower them to make their own database changes with advice from the database team." So they tried that. And at first, it failed badly. Teams were supposedly empowered to make their own database changes, but every time they tried to actually make a change, the database team overrode it. I remember one team lead saying, "Why bother? They're going to shoot it down anyway." That frustration spread, and eventually teams stopped trying and waited for permission instead. When we dug in, it was obvious why things weren't working. No one had defined which decisions product teams could make independently versus which ones the database team still had authority over, a problem with clarity. Teams did have database skills, but they weren't aligned across the organization about what good database development looked like and how to do it, which was a need for better capability. And then there were a couple of broken systems. They were still using the old process for managing work flowing through the database team, which didn't fit the new authority structure. And there was no common approach for resolving disagreements. So to help them fix this, we held a workshop with the database team and participants from product teams to create some clear guidelines about who could make which decisions. Then we got some of the database team members to run workshops about database development patterns and why things had been implemented in certain ways in the system up to that point. And finally, we helped them set up a lightweight review process where teams could get fast feedback on proposed database changes. And we set up that process with a bias towards approving rather than blocking changes.
Oh, that's nice. It's a great example of addressing all three pillars. You created clarity with the guidelines, you increased capability through the internal training, and then established a system with the early feedback process.
Yeah, and it worked. Teams started making more decisions independently, and when they did need to involve the database teams, the conversations were more productive. The funny thing was that over time, product teams actually made better decisions than when they were trying to control everything centrally. They had a better understanding of the product changes that the database changes were helping to create.
I've seen that pattern too. When you support empowerment properly, teams often make better decisions than when everything had to go through central control. They have more context about their specific situation and they can move faster. And this isn't just about technical decisions. We use these three pillars, the clarity, capability, and systems, when helping organizations with product decisions, process decisions, really any area where you want teams to be empowered.
Right. Last month, I worked with a product team struggling with stakeholder relationships. Leadership kept saying to product owners, you own your product strategy, but they felt paralyzed. One told me, every time I prioritize one stakeholder's request, another one is furious, and I don't know how to win here. When we looked at those three pillars, the problem was obvious. They had the capability. They knew their market, they knew the customer, they knew the technology, but they lacked the clarity on how to handle stakeholder conflicts and didn't have a good system for managing competing demands.
So what did you end up doing there?
We helped them create a stakeholder interaction map, basically clarity about which stakeholders needed to be consulted for which types of decisions and how frequently. And they ended up scheduling a few regular stakeholder review sessions where product leaders could share their thinking and get input early before decisions were locked in.
I bet that changed the relationship with stakeholders quite a bit.
It did. Instead of stakeholders feeling like they had to fight for their priorities, they understood the process and trusted that they'd be heard at the right time.
If you're seeing these patterns in your organization, take a closer look at those three pillars of empowerment. Does your team have the clarity they need to make good decisions? Do they have the capability to deliver? And are your systems supporting them or holding them back? When you build those foundations, empowerment stops being a buzzword. We don't have empowerment theater, and it starts delivering real results, productive empowerment.
In something we haven't mentioned yet, but if you're familiar with our work, you probably caught it. These three pillars, clarity, capability, and systems, form the foundation of the Humanizing Work 3 Jobs of Management model. This model is designed to help leaders and managers create environments where teams thrive. By focusing on clarity, capability, and systems, you're not just empowering teams, you're fulfilling the key responsibilities of management in a human-centered way.
Right. This model is at the core of how we work with organizations. We offer regular public and private workshops to teach the 3 jobs of management in depth and explore how to improve all three. If you'd like some help diving deeper on those ideas, visit humanizingwork.com to learn more.
Mm-hmm. Empowerment isn't, in essence, about removing constraints, though you might do that. It's really about creating the conditions for great decisions. And when you do that, the results can be incredible.